Welcome to Books and Beyond. I'm your host, Jimmy Bennett, and Books and Beyond is the show where we try to help people personify their aspirations. I'm an author myself. I've written a few books you see here in front of you. And one other thing I'd like to mention before we get started is anybody interested in the written word or any kind of publishing, editing, graphics, if you're a writer, there's the Southeastern Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association. We're meeting by Zoom now. It's once a month, every third Monday, usually about 6:30. If you go to the Southeastern Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association page on Facebook, you can get a time and a link. Hopefully, with things calming down a little bit in this pandemic, we'll be back to meeting in person. It's been a tough haul for all of us. But anyways, I really want to get to the show here because I'm very, very excited. My guest today is Colleen Lynch, and she is the owner of the No Other Book Like This store that she has recently taken over in Groton.
Yeah.
You know? Hi, Colleen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. So let's get started. I mean, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started as a librarian. I went to library school at Simmons in Boston, and I was working in Wellesley, Mass. At their public library, and I love old books. I've always loved old books. I've always collected them, and they would get donations so many times of old books that were either falling apart or about, strange topics or, stuff they couldn't put in the collection, stuff they didn't think would sell in the book sale. And everyone knew on the floor, Colleen loves old books, give them to her. So I started getting books for free, and I accumulated a hoarder's amount of books and needed to sell some of them because there were some on topics I maybe would never read, and I like to only own books that I've read or would read. So I picked out some. I started on Etsy and sold maybe 1,000 a month of rare books. And so this was suddenly income that I was making on things I was getting for free. And I was like, this is a great idea. Slowly, that tapered off, obviously. And I went on to become a librarian in New Haven, and they don't have a book sale, and it wasn't the same situation. So I started looking for books as a part-time job while being a librarian, and found all these little bookstores. I would look at antique shops that have different books, and I slowly started meeting other booksellers online who would be interested in what I had, or I'd be interested in what they had. And I just sold books as a part-time job. I sort of started my own social media and got a lot of followers for the pictures I would post, and I would sell that way, and sold off my own website. And suddenly, 3 years after being a librarian at New Haven, this summer, I was looking for another job closer to Groton as a librarian, and I was sort of not finding very much. And serendipitously, I walked into the bookstore that used to be known as Books, Etc., and previously the Paperback Trader.
Yeah, yep.
I don't know if anyone knows Linda or Candace. Those were the two previous owners. And I wasn't supposed to be there. My flight was late, and I just wandered in, was talking to Candace, and she was like, I'm gonna buy a lottery ticket. Like, you're perfect. I want to sell this place. I haven't posted it anywhere. You should consider buying it. And I felt like I had to, because the hobby, I love being a librarian, but the hobby is kind of being a real thing and having a brick and mortar store and just kind of falling in my lap. I figured I would just have to make it work somehow.
Right.
So yeah, I took over in August, and we changed the name to what my online name was. I'm not sure what I would have called it otherwise.
Yeah.
It's a very long name, but hopefully, people like it and have learned slowly that it's under new management. We're making some changes, and that it's a new bookstore made out of an old bookstore. It's a great location, and it's sort of a new small business in Groton.
I love it. When I went in, the thing that struck me was I like all the books, the racks and racks of the books.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives you that sort of, not like a home library, but, just, what I mean? It just makes you want to browse. It makes you want to look around. I love you put some furniture in there.
Mm-hmm.
The little sitting area and stuff
Yeah.
is pretty nice.
I wanted it to be almost like a library. I think that librarian in me pulled out and wanted it to be cozy and browsable and
Right.
stuff.
So where do you get your books from?
So right now I'm doing a lot of donations for credit if they're in saleable condition for trade books. But the rare books, it's usually either ones I brought in from my collection built up over like 6 years, or I travel to different bookstores that I know or antique stores that I know that sell books all over Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. I do a lot of book hunting, and I'll have sometimes I'll have like a bookseller's discount with different supportive booksellers because we're all kind of a community, you know. And if I find a gem, I can kind of at this point after like 6 or 7 years experience doing this, I can kind of even by the binding know whether to pull it out of the stack or not,
Right.
whether it's going to be sort of special. And I run into crazy fate situations all the time where something will be signed and I'll just pull it out randomly and suddenly I realize it's signed. I can kind of tell if it's a first edition, I'll pull it out kind of thing. And I'm learning what sells best. You know, a lot of the 1890s books are really beautiful, sort of like this one that we're going to talk about, have the gold and the engraving. And people love old books, and especially illustrated books.
Yeah.
They're sort of like an emblem of another time. So it's not necessarily something you're going to crack open and read. It's almost something that you just want to keep as like a treasure of something that is interesting to you.
You know, it's interesting you said that illustrations because now that I think about it, really a lot of modern books really don't have illustrations anymore. Where the old ones used to,
Always,
even like the old
almost
Doyle,
always, yeah.
the Sherlock Holmes books, there was always illustrations. That's what I always kind of liked. You know, sort of gave you that mental visual reference point almost. You know, it's funny because I probably had about 400 books I collected over my lifetime. And in fact, when I built my family room, I built these long, huge shelves so I could put all in there, double stacked all over the place. But eventually my wife was like, you know, you've read them all. You know, I kept them and I thought, you always think that, you know, your kids or somebody will, but, you know, people, you know, my kids they read 1 or 2 of them, but they didn't, you know. So anyways, at one point I decided to get rid of them. And I remember I took them up to this one spot, and they just really weren't interested, you know, in the books. And I'm not saying I didn't have anything rare, but it was just stuff that interested me, and you know, stuff I liked. But I did take some books down to Linda when she had it at the Paperback Book Trader, and I don't know how she determined it, but she took a couple of boxes, she went through them quickly, and she pulled out like 3 or 4 paperbacks, and I you know what I mean? But I had no idea why
those
out
ones.
of all the books, you know, I would thought some of the books were more popular or, you know, whatever. And she picked out, like I said, like 4 or 5, 6 books. It was, you know, she gave me a few dollars for it. It wasn't, you know, I mean, trying to get rid of it. And I ended up donating the rest to Goodwill.
Right. And a lot of people are doing that. And so I hope that they know. More people are finding out that they can come to my store if their books are in saleable condition, if they're in a genre we have room for. Like right now, we have no room for romance paperbacks. We have way too many of those. We're running out of space for certain things, but we're trying to make more space for sort of everything. And I love giving a certain amount of credit. I get regulars that way. People will read a book. They decide they don't want to keep it. They'll bring it back. I'll give them a little percentage, and they can use it in store.
Yeah.
So I get good books that way. I mean, books that people are interested in. If someone in the community was interested in it, you know, you can bet someone else in the community was interested in it. But the paperback thing is kind of funny because I talked to Linda when I met her, and she was the paperback trader. So her whole thing was trading and paperbacks. So that's probably why she pulled out the paperbacks, where I'm way more of a hardcover person. I pull both, but I'm much more of a hardcover lover. So the store now has a random assortment of both.
Right. Yeah, so book appraising is a big part of what you do then, really. I mean, it's not, you're just not just selling books, you know,
I have to price them out, yeah. It's a lot of research, and being a librarian, you're taught in school how to research. Research is like, you need to know the answer to the patron's question or you need to find it.
Right.
And so you're helping them with an essay, you're helping them find their relative, you're helping them find a job, you're helping them all this kind of stuff. So I use those research skills to get better and better at figuring out if there's another book at a different price that's the same book in better condition, or like what it's selling for, how many are selling online, is it actually rare, why would it be rare, what would someone pay for it.
Yep.
And it started with the rare books because that was what I was selling, but now I'm learning the trade, sort of trade paperback and hardcover and popular books and stuff, which I learned what was popular as a librarian too, because I would learn the authors and I would learn, you know, what was going out all the time
Right.
and what people were interested in, and now I'm learning what the Groton community is interested in. So it's a constant learning experience for appraising like modern books. Appraising rare books, I'm pretty set at this point, out of practice.
Right. Mm-hmm. I know regional makes a big difference in how people, what books people are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, but even my books are set at Gillette's Castle, which is down in East Haddam.
Mm-hmm.
And the few times that I've done events on that side of the river closer to the castle, I've done exceptionally well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, much more than
People love local
away.
history.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's because they have a connection to it.
Absolutely.
They know where it is. They've been there. This kind of thing. So let's talk now. This book, I'll give you a little background of the book. I was probably 14, 15 years old. I used to do odd jobs for an elderly woman in my neighborhood. And one day she gave me this book. She said, "I want you to have this book," and I've kept it ever since. And I've been hauling it around with me from everywhere. Kept it in a paper bag, and it's not in the greatest shape. It's called The Great South by Edward King, but it was published in 1875, right? So now you did an appraisal on it. So
I did.
so let's talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
I do appraisals. And I charge if it's like a whole library's worth, but usually if it's a couple books or something, I offer that for free. So if you're looking for sort of what a book would be worth, I can do it very quickly now. So there's different elements you look at in a book to see what it would be worth, but you definitely have to do your general Google search to see if it just comes up as a common book. This one I could tell is not a common book right away. I looked at this book when you brought it in, and I was very excited by the front. Let's see if I can get it. The front is engraved and has gold, and so instantly I knew it was 1800s. A lot of times in the early 1900s, they changed to just doing a gold title and a blank front or an engraved front with no gold. There's different publishing trends that went through each time period, and we do that now. Like if you see a really popular book has like a mostly white cover with like just the title, suddenly every popular book that's out there is coming out with like bright white title or pages or covers, and you're like, oh, it's because they know this sold, so they're going to copy that. So this trend, I mean, it's always been that way, where it's like, okay, what's selling? Let's make the book that way. But in the 1890s mainly, and 1800s, but mid 1800s to 1890s, those are the really rare books that people collect. They're usually not in great condition at that point. 1890s can be in better condition than the 1870s. So it's exciting to me when I find like 1850s, 1870s, because, the condition might not be great, but it's more collectible, more rare, and just more special. It's harder to find. So when I found this one from you, I was excited that it was 1870. And you can kind of tell the binding is ripping a little bit, and it's still in readable shape. If you open up the top of the binding, you can see that it's sewn still, so it's not going to fall apart. But this lack of this sort of, I don't know what you would call it, it's cloth, but it's a little lack of, I don't know, it needs like another reinforcement kind of thing. Would make people a little bit wary of the condition, and there is wear on the side. And a lot of times people love the cover and they are instantly like, oh, I want to look inside. I want to see what this is about. I want to see if there's illustrations, that kind of thing. But you are putting it usually on your library, on your bookcase. So they want the binding to have the title and look nice too.
They want the spine to look good.
They want the spine to look good, yeah. So basically, I took one look at this book. I mean, the size, the title, that's a popular thing. People love local history. Anyone in the South, I mean, anyone that's traveled to the South might be interested in something like this. It's almost like an encyclopedia told through story because it's basically every single, I don't want to open it or anything, but it's every single southern state basically as this person goes through of the history. And people love history books.
Right.
And so this one I knew would be rare. And the condition I knew would cost it a little bit, but I did appraise it and I looked it up online. Did that Google search, couldn't find it really. Did an eBay search, which is like the second level of that, because if you can find one on eBay, I mean, the price could be anywhere from way underpriced because they want to get rid of it, or a generally high price because it's worth that. So that's a good place to start. And we found one for $100, and it was in worse condition than this, which was a reason this person was probably not a bookseller of any sort. They were probably just looking for like what they could get. For something in that condition or didn't know where to market it. A lot of times people sell on eBay if they don't really know where to market books. There's a site called Abe Books, ABEBOOKS, abebooks.com. It stands for American Book Exchange or something similar. And that is a good place to find more details. We ended up finding only 2, which surprised me. I thought there would be more. 2 listings. One was for like 400 something, and it had no picture. And so something with no picture, I say never buy. Just don't do it. If the person is too lazy to put a picture up, and it could be anything. It could be in terrible condition, even though they said great condition, etc. It could be any seller that just signs up for an Abe Books account, so you don't really know whether to trust their listing. The second one was the higher one. It was $595 or $585, and it was in better condition. So it made sense for me to sort of split the difference, but go a little higher because the eBay I thought would be underselling, and it was worse condition. So you're in the middle condition. I wouldn't go splitting it. I would go a little higher. So I said maybe $500 if you had the good outlet to find a buyer, because the thing is you got to find a buyer. So the worth would be probably up there with the 500, 600, and out of the rarity of it, the fact that we couldn't really find it elsewhere. There's also another site called vialibri.net, and they'll look internationally for copies. Couldn't find one there either. So this is a very rare book, and the worth, I mean, it's what it's worth to you.
Right.
But it's also what it's worth if you were trying to sell it, what someone would buy it for if you could find the buyer. Every book you need to find the buyer, or else it's worthless.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I used to always say that a lot of times too, like if you watch shows like Antique Roadshow, and they say, oh, this is worth $800. I'm like, well,
who's going to buy that for that?
That's it's no matter what it's worth, you got to get the check.
Exactly,
you know what I mean? I really had no
interest in selling. Yes, I knew that.
It was just one of those. I've always been interested.
Yeah.
You know.
And you carried it around since you got it. I mean, obviously, it means something to you. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would, I would have never gotten rid of it. You know what I mean? I just kept it, wherever I was.
I mean, my store. If you go into my store, the first 3 bookcases right there are filled with rare books. That's half my collection. So if you see how many books there are there, I mean, that's all in my apartment, and that's all stuff I won't sell. Right. So it's just as rare, but I won't sell it because I love it so much. Yeah. So I understand that.
So a couple of quick questions. Just kind of wondering for people at home, because I think a lot of people at home probably have books or, or their family's home, or, grandma had this book and they just didn't get rid of it or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
So some of the things I've always wondered about was, because I have a small collection of signed books. Because being an author too, I love
going to author events.
I love signed books. So, is there the old myth? I don't know if it's a myth or not. Is there a difference between live and dead author?
Yes. Unfortunately, you will see people come in for 2 reasons, asking desperately for a certain book. It will be if a Netflix show came out for this book, suddenly they all want or a movie, they all want Dune. And I go, okay, 6 people came in for Dune today. my copies sold, like something's going on with Dune. Google search, yes,
Right.
Dune came out. And the second one would be if an author has died. Agatha Christie is always popular. Anne Rice, Anne Rice recently
passed away,
died.
yeah.
Joan Didion recently died. So it's like any of the authors that have passed are going to be collectible, but the ones that recently passed, Anne Rice especially, we have a huge Anne Rice collection. We have a signed Anne Rice, and that's a classic author that is going to continue to be classic.
Right.
Is what I meant by the Agatha Christie thing. So continue to be classic past their death, but it reminds people of that author, and suddenly they're in the news and they go, you know what? I want to read that book. I want to reinforce my collection. I lost
Right.
this book a while ago. I loved this author. I want this. Or they go, other people might be interested in this. Let me sell my Anne Rice books.
Right.
So
Right.
it does. They Betty White, rest in peace. We had 2 books on Betty White. They went right away that week because we put them on display just so people would know. Who knows who would have come in, weeks before, months before, just for Betty White's book. So,
that's really kind of a fascinating thing when you think about it, because I think most movies and storylines and stuff come from books,
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But then after they're published, like Game of Thrones,
Yep.
as the series Game of Thrones was popular enough among the fantasy,
The high
people,
fantasy
the high
class,
fantasy
yeah.
stuff like that. But then after the show came out, I'm sure those sales must have went through the roof.
And they reprinted them.
Right,
So
reprinted them,
suddenly
yeah.
the reprints are worth almost nothing because they're reprinted in mass based
Right.
on demand and they're brand new. But they might be worth something in the future. You never know. The first editions of that kind of stuff, like the first editions of Harry Potter, those you want to hang on to. First editions of Game of Thrones you want to hang on to. Those are, people will rediscover, things come back. People will rediscover Game of Thrones in 20 years. And suddenly, you have the oldest copy kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So you got to pay attention to what's popular and what people want. And there's the lasting classics that are always going to be popular. And then there's the sort of television show brings up the attention. It's basically what's in the news you always have to pay attention to.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I didn't really think about it that way, but
Even old books, like if they redo Around the World in 80 Days, that one, I have a 1800s copy of Around the World in 80
Oh, wow.
Days. It's called Tour of the World in 80 Days before they changed the title. Someone's going to come in for that, like it just triggers people's memories and like suddenly they want the book.
Now, I have a book, too. I wanted to ask you about this. I actually, when I lived in New Hampshire, and this was probably maybe 1990, 89, 90, 90, 91, I was a big Stephen King fan. And in a bookstore up there, they had the first edition of The Drawing of the Three, part of his Dark Tower series. And I remember it was $75. It was the first edition. But it was pretty new at the time, But I bought it, and I still have it. But so I know first editions. It's not signed, but I know first editions are,
Important to people.
Yeah, much more
Yep.
important. But one thing I noticed, I actually was going through the books after I brought you this book. I noticed they on the jacket flap, where the cover, they had clipped off
The price.
the corner. They clipped off the
Yep.
price. Does that kind of affects the price, though, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
it's sort of like
It affects the price. Anything condition-wise will affect the price. And
Right.
They want it dust jacket. Like people that seriously collect books of their favorite authors or something. Stephen King's a huge seller at my store.
Yeah.
I take any Stephen King.
Yeah.
That goes quickly. And especially first editions that have price clips.
Wow.
Yeah, that'll really lower the...
Yeah, so I was kind of laughing. I was
Yeah.
kind of saying, you dummy.
It's like, why did you do that, too?
Yeah, I know it was the first edition, but they were probably selling the book for $11 at the time.
Yeah.
But they clipped off the price.
Clipped
I
up
said,
the
so
price.
you
And
just-
it just boggles my
Yeah.
mind why you would do that. It just defaces the book.
So now you're going along. What are your plans here? I know you got a few things that you're hoping to do, or
Yeah, so we have this thing coming up called Next Book. We want to have on my website a book suggestion service, and we have Book Hunter, which is going to be an easier way for me to keep track of all the people that are looking for specific books. You fill out a form on the website of what you're looking for, when you need it by, any other details, and then it will go into my Excel sheet, and I'll have, when I'm book hunting, instead of scribbled out notes trying to remember who asked for what when,
oh wow,
I'm going to have a system where people can come in and they can fill it out there, they can fill it out online, and that happens a lot. I have a lot of people coming in for like a Madeline, and I'll get it the next week, and then I'm going, oh, I wish that person came in. So it'll be an easier way for me to keep track of that. And then Next Book is going to be sort of a personalized, like, what are your favorite books? What are your favorite genres? You figure this out. You put it on the form, and we get back to you, or I get back to you with like 5 to 10 suggestions based on that. And as detailed as I can make it, like maybe a little paragraph of why this book was chosen. But I get people asking me all the time for, I really like this author, what else should I read? And you get that as a librarian a lot. So it's called Reader's Advisory, where I don't read every book ever written, but I am aware of similar authors, similar writing styles, who is a good suggestion for this person who likes this book. So
I tend to read like that. If I come across an author I like, then I usually try to grab
something similar.
I'm a big series kind of guy too, because something familiar about reading the characters, different situations and stuff. It's just,
and
I like to do
we'll
that,
get people saying Tom Clancy, who's similar to this. I've read every Tom Clancy ever.
Right.
And then you'll say, okay, let's take you to the mystery section. This person writes like this. This is a series. Do you like the writing more than the plot, or do you want a plot-based novel?
Right.
Just a lot of questions. So I want that available online to people. And then they will get like 20% off of the book if they buy it from me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good.
So people can get the suggestions if they're not in Groton, but if they come to the store and buy one of the suggestions, then they'll get 20% off.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world. I mean, I love the place. And I'm hoping that eventually you'll have a few of my books down there to sell too.
We're building, we're building up our local authors section and our local history section. So if you have any local history books or you're a local author, we want you in there. And I do consignment. I just want to make like $2 or $3 on your book, so you'll get most of the book price. And it's really just sign something. And
well, that's great, because some of the other bigger bookstores, well, I shouldn't say bigger, other bookstores,
modern bookstores,
are cutting out their consignment programs and stuff, which is, it's tough for us local authors. I mean,
absolutely,
we we have our websites and we do events. But
you do. I appreciate so much the local authors that have come in, and like you, they self-promote amazingly. Yeah, it's a lot lot of work, and I appreciate that.
I mean, it's,
you have to.
Writing is just,
so I can help that way.
Yeah, which is great, which we really appreciate. So, anyways, I encourage everybody to stop down and come check out the store. It's just a great place. I just love that feeling of that. It's got that cozy, but booking, just title after title after title. I mean, I'm telling you, there's something in there you want. Anyways, every time I go in there,
for like an hour.
Yeah, every time I go in there, I go, oh yeah, yep. I'm sure I'll be grabbing one every time I go in. But
I hope so.
I love it. So, well, thank you very much, Colleen. I wish you all the best of luck, and we hope to be seeing you soon, and as your events pop up, we'll talk about it more.
Catch these books in my store soon.
Yes, very soon. Well, thank you very much. That's all for Books and Beyond today. I thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Take care.